Good morning. Welcome to Our Neutral Voices Presents a Financial Pillar. I'm Ryan Lepird. Joining me again today is Kris Hannah from DR Financial.
Good to see you again.
James Scott, Our Neutral
Morning,
Voices.
my brother. How are you?
I'm excellent. Glad to be here today. Yes. So we've been doing the show for a few months now, right? We've talked about a lot of different topics from, banking to budgeting to credit, mortgages, insurance, and so on and so on. You asked an interesting question this morning. If we, as the experts in our field, had to rank, the topics that we talked about, from 1 to 5 in order of most importance, what would those be? And I took a step back. I was like, that's an interesting question. I don't know. Let me think about that. So Kris and I got a pen and a piece of paper and kind of jotted down our thoughts and see if we would agree. So today we're going to kind of bring you our top 5 points from the subjects that we've talked about that will hopefully lead us to, conversation about, is poverty a choice, right? If we have all these tools in place, is poverty truly a choice? Okay. So my first one I came up with was mindset, right? We can have all these other tools, but if our mind's still stuck, right, in a poverty mindset or in a different, negative mindset, do those tools really matter? Yeah. What's your thoughts on that?
Wow, that's loaded. Extremely loaded. So I totally agree. Because if the mindset is on stuck and the person is not willing to utilize the resources and take the initiative to begin to change their mindset. So to understand that you are stuck in a certain space that you have a choice to get out of. And then 2, to be willing to do the needed or the necessity or the things that are needed to move yourself away from that space that you're in. So I definitely agree with you 100% that the mindset is where it all starts at. And then the realization of that you have an opportunity or a choice to begin to change your own trajectory economically, financially in your life.
Absolutely. That's what I was thinking of when I jotted those down was like, I actually didn't start with that. I think I started with education. But if you don't have the mindset to understand that you need to change or you want to change, are you going to seek out that education?
Yeah, I think the willingness to do anything in life, I don't care if it's going to get a higher education, whatever it is, you have to make a choice. And I think everything that we choose to do in life eventually affects us or impacts us. And then we end up where we are in life because of the choices that we make. I don't care if it's in your finances, if it's in your spiritual walk in life, or whatever your belief system is. Choice is always relevant, and your choices are made because of the mindset that you have. So the stigma and the things that you believe in or you allow to absorb you mentally will dictate how you look, or however whatever is going on in your life looks. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah, just because my dad beat my mom doesn't mean that I need to grow up and
do the same thing.
Beat my woman. Just because my dad drank and was drunk doesn't mean that I have to grow up and be a drunk. Just because I grew up in poverty doesn't mean that I'd have to stay in poverty. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So I could research, utilize the tools. Man, this world is so in your palm of your hand right now, full of information. So are you looking at porn, or are you looking at something that could better your future? You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Are you playing video games, or are you putting in the needed work to move yourself from where you are?
Absolutely. And it all starts where?
Yeah. It starts in the mind.
Mind. Yep. Agreed. Number 2 I had was education, right? So we agreed that, mindset is the starting point, and then where do we go from there? Because if we have, we come from an impoverished community, impoverished family lifestyle, is the education there? Is anybody teaching us, right? Or is it teaching us that this is where we're supposed to be, right? So education-wise, seeking out that information that you were just talking about, James, whether it be from watching shows like this or going to the seminars that ONV is putting on, or seeking out that information through other podcasts online, whatever the case may be, Brightpoint, for example, as well. Yep. Anything to add to that, Kris?
Yeah, there's so many ways these days that you can access it, like you said. There's hundreds of YouTube shows on finances, TikToks, you can easily go find books, almost every medium you can find it, and for today, really inexpensive. Pretty much free. You can find that information, and you have to think back in as when you were growing up, how did you learn about finances? For most of us, very little, our parents paid the bills pretty much, but, they never seemed to pay them in front of us. That's one thing I do intentionally in my home a lot of time is to sit down at the table and say, hey, what are you doing tonight, Dad? I need to take about an hour and pay the bills, so that they understand that's a part of life, that they see me. I'm not just doing that after they go to bed, and they never understand the process of making an income and paying the bills. You try to be intentional sometimes in front of your children. You may not be thinking about that being intentional, but those little small things, I guarantee you talk to your kids years later. What do you remember? Well, I remember your dad sitting down, once a week, doing the bills and paying them. You were being responsible.
I love that. Like letting the kids see. That's powerful.
Yeah.
So like even that part, but even in the struggle, allow your kids to be aware of the struggle. If you're financially struggling, let them see that, within reason. And at that time, you empower them, like, of course, as you're learning to work yourself out of that, let them be a part of that process, but let them understand what it is to be here and what it takes to get away from here and to stay away from here. Like we allow our kids to be absorbed by, there's so much negativity. Like even for us, if you listen to the news, it's how they say what they say. It's in the manipulation of how they say what they say. They don't ever tell you the 5 good things that happened out of whatever was going on.
No.
But they're going to make
Good
sure
doesn't bring viewers.
No, they're going to make sure that you get the negative aspect of it, right? So when we're raising our kids, and man, God forbid, like when I was younger, I just didn't have this crap, man. Like literally. So if you had the knowledge, to sit your kids down, like, hey, this is why Dad working 3 jobs. One, because I had kids and I shouldn't have had kids. You know what I mean? Choices I made.
Yep.
So now I got to pay child support, then still try to take care of my household. So because of my choices, now I got to work 3 jobs. Now I really can't be a good father or dad because I'm trying to make ends meet to provide, right? Keep the lights on, keep the gas on. And if I were to sit down and share that with my kids, now one thing I did do is I allowed them to see my check stubs so they could see where all my money was going. So to scare them from having kids like I did, which it worked really well. So
Scared straight.
yeah, pretty much. But do something, man, to empower the innocent minds so that they don't get stuck in that recycling or regurgitating system that's been developed by society. So if we were to start early, like he said, let them see the struggle. Let them see, and as you're learning to work yourself out of that, let them be a part of that process of working yourself out. I love that.
Yeah, and I look at, like, I know I have a couple girls, and I sit there and I always tell them, they like certain things to enjoy in life, and I say, if you want these kind of things to happen in your life when you get married, then you need to find a good man who has a good work ethic, who's going to be nice to you and take care of you, love you. Not cheat on you.
Seems like in today's world, it's the opposite.
Right.
For the opposite of that.
It's very important, the spouse that you pick, whether it's male or female, it's very important that you pick one that's going to take care of you, that can help financially support you. If you want to be a stay-at-home mom, then you probably should find a man that can work and make some decent money so you can stay at home. Or at least you guys can figure out a budget to allow, a spouse to stay home. I know when I got married many years ago, we weren't making that much in income. But we looked at life and said, it was important for my wife to stay at home with our small children. And so we sacrificed in those early years so she could stay home for 10 years, with those kids during those formative years. And those are choices that you have to make. Maybe you don't have all the money to do everything you want to do at that time.
I think a key word you just said there was sacrifice, right? A lot of people aren't willing to sacrifice and give up the things for a longer term outlook.
Amen to that,
right?
bro.
They don't want to sacrifice today for 3 years from now or 5 years from now that could put them in a better situation, right? So I like that. But it always amazes me when we're talking about education of how important all this stuff is to our entire life and how little emphasis is put on it when we're young, especially through like the school systems, right? They teach you very basic things throughout there, but they don't teach you the things that you really need to know before, and I think mainly to appreciate money. So if you don't come from a background or a family that has money and appreciates money and makes wise decisions with money, and you're not being taught that in school, you're going to grow up with those same bad habits. I was just listening to a story yesterday about an NFL player who's got 3 women pregnant right now, right? And the stories they're telling, right, may or may not be accurate, but it's, he begged me and said he wanted me to have his baby and he wanted this and he wanted that, and now that they are, he's wanting to terminate it, right?
Wow.
You have a football player who's making millions of dollars who has 3 women, at least 3, pregnant at the same time. His career longevity is what, maybe 10 years in the NFL? If he's a great player?
Man, yeah.
Those kids are 18 years, at least, right? That money that he's making, that money that could have been life-changing for his entire family, generational money, now it's going out the door to what?
Child
support, right?
Lots of
because he wasn't thinking, or wasn't thinking right, with what he did. But listen to those stories just kind of makes you think like, where is that education at? This is a story that's been going on year after year after year, decades. I mean, from when I was a kid, Sean Kemp, how many kids does he have? Right? That's a classic story.
I've heard the story.
Are they utilizing these stories when these young men are becoming athletes and getting all this wealth quickly? And if they are, how are they still making these decisions? Right. Yeah. But it all starts with education, and where's it going to come from? And you need to seek that out. Right. So from there, I think the next one I had was job or career. Right. We talk about sacrifices. It may not be the job that you want. Right. I think you were talking. I think your point was find a job you like, which is very important. But not all of us can get the job we like. We have to get the job that we need to pay the bills, and then maybe grow our career from there. And I think that was one of the points with sacrifices. Right.
Yeah. And it just depends on what type of job environment we're in. Right. Right now, there's many jobs available. So, if you're not finding a job right now, so that's that mental health part. You need to get out of bed in that morning or whenever you gotta get up and go get that job. There's a lot of jobs that are available and are paying decent. Yeah, the inflation is strong right now, so that definitely hurts. Even though you could be making, 15 or $20 an hour, but it's a lot easier to make money when you get up in the morning and you enjoy what you do. Most of us can't.
It's not
make
working
money
if you enjoy what you do, right?
Most of us can't make money unless we get out of bed in the morning. So if you don't have that motivational factor on that mental health, where are you going to be?
Yeah.
Wow.
I think that's one of the big struggles, though, is for most people finding a job that they're happy with, right? Because they're chasing the money. Right, which the money is very, very important. But I think your story with you were working 3 jobs, right? The kids, you weren't there all the time for them, but you were sacrificing for them to build yourself up into a better situation maybe later on, right?
Correct, man. Do what you have to do to move forward, to change your situation. So it's a choice you make.
Yep.
And sometimes you might work a job that you don't like, but even while you're working that job, if you're doing 12 hours a day, there's still 12 other hours. You might have to sacrifice some sleep, but you could do some research, some study to prepare yourself to not be in that job long. But it's another thing, man, to say you want to grow forward, but then you just don't work. And you always got that stipulation, well, I'm going to wait till I find a job I want. That's not logical.
No.
You know what I'm saying? It doesn't make sense. You ever heard the story somebody says, well, we'll wait till we have it all together before we move forward. You would never have it all together. You just have to make a choice to start the process. So you start the process, and in the midst of the process, you adjust as you go to make sure it makes more sense as you move forward. So the choices and being intentional, but the work ethic, like Kris said, man, you have to start. You can't be idle. It doesn't change.
No.
Anything that you want to see change, being idle.
Yep. You got to make the effort, and you got to seek it out. Right.
Yeah, until we get teleporting, we can't go from point A to point B without keep moving our feet forward and growing and learning. Maybe someday we can, and I won't have to take the commute to work. I can just teleport there, but until then.
But I think that goes to a mindset, too, and James, you can probably speak to this better than us, but, in the impoverished community and an impoverished mindset, there really isn't a long-term mindset, right? Like, we're not looking towards retirement, right? We're looking for today, right?
Yeah. No, that's reality.
So when somebody sit there and thinks like, well, they're not really in the mindset of building myself up for 5 years now. That's where they should be, but that's where the mindset, the change in their mindset has to come into play. We're not thinking about just surviving for today, right? Long-term wise, you need to think about surviving 10 years, 20 years from now, or in 10, 20 years, if you survived, where were you at, right? You didn't plan for this.
So how can you do that? I mean, if you're not thinking ahead, how do you get to there?
What we have to do. Yeah, I think it's what comes down to the mindset. It's just the mindset you have to change to not think about just for today. You have to think about 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Not just money. Where's it going to come from?
So I'm going to answer that question. But first, I'm going to ask you, like in your process of planning your financial stability, in your mind, you have enough resources coming in to plan, right?
Yeah.
You do. So at that point, are you living or are you in survival mode?
I would say I'm living.
You're living?
Yep.
Okay, huge difference. Individual that's in poverty, 9 times out of 10, they're in survival mode, which is huge.
Of course.
Like, it's like my last meal, or I got to rob Peter to pay Paul, or I got to figure out where I'm going to get gas money to get to work, or I got to figure out where I'm going to get my lunch money from for the rest of the week because I don't have food at home. I just got enough money for gas. So every choice that I make is figuring out how I'm going to survive, not how I'm going to live. So when we talk about a mental, man, you're mentally just drained. So then the energies that we're talking about, saying moving yourself away or making those changes that you need, it's hard to process that because I'm mentally drained in survival mode, trying to figure out how am I going to survive to feed my kids, to keep the lights on. And so the mindset is just compressed because it can't think freely. So, but then it goes back to the word sacrifice. So
That's what I would think, not to cut you off there, but when you're saying that is somebody in, where my mind goes listening to you talk is that somebody in that environment is in a more dire situation to make that change.
That's poverty.
So are you making that change, right? You need to do that. Somebody in my situation where I'm living, I could be content with where I'm at. Could I be doing better? So is it harder for me to make that change rather than somebody from an impoverished community that's going to put more effort into it because it's basically life or death for them.
correct.
Right?
And I think that goes to, one of my 5 points was expenses or controlling expenses. So in that case, I think either yourself sitting down and going through all your expenses and like make sure we include those secret expenses that we don't tell other people about. Because again, it goes back to one of my always thoughts is, either got to increase income or decrease expenses, or both. But you have to at least do one of those. So again, if you can't increase your income, then you got to control your expenses. You got to look at what you're buying at the grocery store. You got to look at what you're buying with maybe a certain addiction that you have. You have to look at how you're spending your money, and in that poverty mindset, say I have to have this to survive. I don't have to have this to survive. And sometimes you really got to cut it down and, go without a cell phone or go without, the number 3 at the fast food restaurant. Just get the $1 menu, or I guess $1.30 menu now.
And always going back to, hey, when it comes to food, ramen noodles, there's nothing cheaper than that, and it's something I could eat over and over again.
There's a very famous guy on the show that said, eat rice and beans. You've got to make those sacrifices, back what we were talking about earlier, and it stinks, but, if you don't do that, it's really hard to get ahead. You got to increase that income or decrease those expenses.
Absolutely. Next one. So we talked about changing the mindset, seeking out that education, and then making sacrifices when it comes to a job or career, right? To be able to finance your life and maybe hopefully then grow into a job or career that you now enjoy as well. It's a better situation. But then budgeting. We got to sit down. We got to go through our finances through there and see where we need to cut back, right? That's going to allow us to save, for our future, to that long-term mindset that we talked about. Thoughts?
Budgeting to me, would be one of the first steps. After you take that deep breath in your mindset, and you could just okay, let me be intentional about changing my financial space. So at that point, man, you would sit down and you have to look at where you are and gauge what you have in, what you got going out, and then project where you want to be and what does it take to get there. That's planning 101 all the way through. So I want to address my finances, but then I also want to see where I want to be and then prepare to get to that destination as well. So budgeting, to me, is at the top of the pinnacle. Once in your mindset, you decide that you really want to change your financial space.
Absolutely. Kris, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think, again, no matter whether you're in poverty or you're budgeting, get that savings created somehow. That's one of the things that can really, something's always going to pop up. And if you don't have that savings, then that's usually where you start diving into debt or payday loans or stuff like that. So, I mean, thinking, even if you can try to save $10 a week, that's $520 a year.
Yeah, we got to find the money first to be able to save that money.
Correct.
Right? And if you don't know where your money's coming in and it's going out, you're not paying attention to your finances, you're thinking, I have no money, I have no opportunity to save. Sit down, write out your bills, write out the expenses that you have, find where the money's at. And if you find there is no money to save, we now need to make an intentional mindset change of, I need to find another job. I need to do something if I want to change my situation, my financial situation.
And I know it works because I know this past week I had a conversation. My daughter is in college, and I won't name her name, but she called me and said, "Hey, Dad, can I use some of the money to go buy something?" And I'm able to see her bank account, right? I'm able to look into it, and she has plenty of money in there. Right? I said, "Hey, you got a little extra. I mean, you don't necessarily need to use my funds. Not that I don't provide and help out." And then she goes, "Well, I was really trying to keep so much money in my savings account and not go below it." And, as a dad, it made me proud that she at least already had that mindset. She had a goal. And I said, I'll help you out, this time, but you understand sometimes you do have to get into that savings a little bit possibly, or you need to decide what you're spending your money on. Is that important? And number 3, are you working somewhere? She's like, "Oh yeah, we're out cleaning Airbnbs and stuff." So that's the thing I wanted to hear as a father, and that at least made me feel good that she was processing through, And I'm much more willing to, hey, here, I'll fill up your gas, this week because you told me A, you were trying to save a certain amount. B, you said you were out working, and you're trying to control your expenses. So. Trying to work those through a conversation with your daughter, it's a good dad moment.
The power of a savings account when it comes to budgeting, right? You're not earning a lot of interest on it or anything like that, but it's just something in our minds. We see it's in a different account. I mean, that's how I do it as well, too. I see it's in that account there, and I know in my mind it's like, I'm not touching that money unless I absolutely have to. I'm watching my checking account go down each week till I get paid. I get paid in a couple of days. I got to cut back these next couple of days because I don't have enough there to do what I need to, right? I'm not pulling from that savings account unless I absolutely have to. Unfortunately, I've had to do that a few times recently. So, but yeah, in all reality, a savings account is just another account. The money's sitting there. You can see it. You can transfer it to your checking. You can utilize it anytime you want. But the purpose is to change your mindset to be, this is my checking account. This is budgeting wise. This is what I have to spend until my next paycheck. This over here, I'm not touching unless I have to, or this is for vacation, or this is for my rainy day fund, or whatever the case may be. Right. Number 5, investing. Okay, for me, we're never going to get to a financially secure place if we don't invest. Now, that's whether we're investing in money, investing in ourselves, whatever the case may be. I think the biggest thing in there is investing in ourselves, right? We were talking about seek out that education. If you're in a job, it's not paying a whole lot, go get those extra degrees or skills, right? Invest in yourself to better yourself down the line. James?
Investing in self is priority because it stems back to the very beginning of the conversation. Is poverty a choice? So literally everything stems to what you're willing to invest in. Are you willing to invest in yourself mentally to change your mindset? Invest in yourself willingly to set down and budget. Invest in yourself willingly to go out and establish needed relationships that will give you needed information. So the word investment in self is so huge, and I think it touches every sector in trying to grow yourself into a better space. Being intentional for oneself to make sure that my life is better for my kids, and so that my kids can see me grow into a different space and then know that, A, it's possible. And even if life hits you with a hard wall, you still can climb out of it. I'll share one story with you, man. Majority of Africans from Africa or a lot of people from other countries look at a lot of Americans and think that we're selfish or that we're lazy. We don't take advantage of the great opportunities that we have in America. As much as a lot of us complain about how this country is one of the greatest countries on this earth right now, in reality. So they will assess us as black, lazy people that don't want to do the work that's needed to grow ourselves forward. Typically, you'll hear that once you get to know a true African from Africa that's come here. They say, man, you have the opportunity of a lifetime, and you don't want to work. You want to complain? I take you to my home, and you see what struggle is. You know what struggle. You don't know what struggle is. And that's how they talk, man. But you don't know what you don't know. You think your life is bad. But, man, you look around the world and see where real poverty is, where people don't have nothing. They don't have a food bank down the street. They don't have a church that has food to give them. Or they don't have a bright point that help you pay your bills or keep your lights on. And if you don't have it, you just don't have it. You can't feed the kids. You just can't feed the kids. So in America, man, our what we look at as poverty is wealthiness to some other countries. So it's a mindset. But what are you doing in the space that you're in to make your life better? If you want to keep up with the Joneses, if you want to drive that nicer car, live in that nicer neighborhood or that nicer house, are you sitting down to prepare to be in that space? Because nobody's going to bring it to you and give it to you. The mindset, the choices that we make, and the lack of investing in ourselves will solidify. And the question that you asked, is poverty a choice? In some situations, in some spaces in your life at a certain time, it may not be. But if you stay in poverty, it's because you choose to. You don't have to stay in poverty. In America, you don't.
No.
You have a choice to get out of it.
Yeah. Just are you going to make that choice?
Yeah, I think it was sometime this past week I heard a study or report that I think in America the poverty rate is 5%. And then they were talking about, I think they were talking about maybe Europe as a whole. Just there, it was 20%. So when you really think about that, our poverty rate is small here. But to me, I look at, like what you said, part of the reason why that is because in reality, I think we have so much more opportunity in this country to get out of poverty than other nations. So you have to kind of, again, reverse your mindset. Yeah, some of us may be in poverty. We may not have a choice of being in poverty. But there's so many opportunities available out there. You just got to get up in the morning, get your mental health straight, and get out and figure it out. And the biggest thing for me is, find a mentor. I think we all have to know somebody in our life that's successful, even if we're in poverty.
Yes.
Somebody is a manager at that store. Somebody owns that business. Go talk to them and see if they can be willing to sit down and just talk with you. If they're not, then find somebody else. And probably if that boss or owner of a business won't sit down and talk with you, probably a good idea. You probably should go work somewhere else. That's probably a good idea. Find someone that cares about you enough so that you will care about what you're doing.
I think you just stole exactly what I was thinking. Is there poverty? Yes. Don't want to downplay that. But is there absolutely opportunity in this country to change your situation and take yourself out of poverty? Absolutely. Especially compared to other countries where they, as you mentioned, James, truly understand what poverty is. Their choice was to come here, right?
Man.
Why?
By any means necessary.
And why? Why did they choose to come here?
Opportunity.
Right? They saw the opportunity. They know what's here. Okay? They're not going to accept poverty, right? They've changed their mindset. They know what they want. They did what they had to do to come to this country to give that opportunity, which is what this country was built on anyways, right?
The reason why so many people are coming over the border still come to the U.S. Obviously, there is something still here, right or wrong, political indifference, whatever. But, people are not going to other certain countries. People are not pouring in there.
People aren't leaving here to go there.
No. So, for as great as country are or as bad as you think it is, this is a land of opportunity still.
So, does poverty exist in this country? Absolutely.
We all agree with that.
Yes. But is it a choice, right? And can you make the choice to change that and change your family's direction? Absolutely, because the opportunity is there and ready for you.
Amen.
So we started it with, James challenged us with what's the top 5 topics, right? And Kris and I, in no particular order, kind of we're on the same page with what we said. Number 1 for me is mindset, right? Starts there. Seek out the education, okay? Job, career, and I'll even maybe throw one up. Based upon what you, James said, is, invest in yourself first. Invest in yourself, and then maybe seek out the job, the career, and then, budgeting, which is kind of putting your mindset on your finances. right? So, we've talked about numerous subjects on this show, the banking, the budgeting, all that stuff we just went over. But I'd really like to start hearing from the audience, what are some of the topics we've talked about that maybe you want to hear a little bit more about? And are there any topics that we've missed that you would like to hear about? So please, we'd love to see your comments. Let us know your thoughts because we'd love to talk about what you want to hear about because that's why we're here, right? We're coming up with subjects that we want to talk about, that we think are important. But let's hear from you, and let's hear what you think is important, whether you agree or disagree with what we're talking about. Give us some feedback, and let's have some deeper conversations, in future episodes.
Like that.
But for today, want to give a shout out to our upcoming podcast.
Yes, sir.
October 11th.
Ice cold, man.
Ice cold. The podcast is cooler than a polar bear's toenails, right?
Long toenails.
Long toenails.
About like that long right there.
Yeah. So check us out. We'll be back next week for the financial podcast at Wednesday, 8:30. We'll see you then. Underneath your voices. Peace.
Peace.